You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys having coming in. She just won't stop. She just loves being a part of the show. What can you do? Anyway, guys, thanks for being here. We certainly appreciate you guys being a part of the show. As always, we're just bringing you all the latest and smartest people from a broad range of stuff. We've really got lots of different people talking about lots of different things in the show. Some might seem a little bit more out there and far-fetched, but I mean, how much out there and far-fetched am I? So you put up with me for 15 years. We brought you the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House advisors, everyone from Pulitzer Prize winners to journalists to news anchors, so many great authors that have been on the show and everything else. What more do you want, people? Seriously, like, I'm just giving you everything I got. 3 to 4 shows a day, 15 to 20 shows a weekday. All that we ask and we beg of you, please, for the love of God, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss 1 on the Tickety Talkie. We had an amazing gentleman. I'm excited to talk to him today. He's got some interesting stuff he's going to teach us from 2 different kind of paradigms that are kind of interesting. Adrian Knight joins us on the show today. He is an acquisition entrepreneur and business turnaround expert, and he's an accomplished athlete, endurance athlete as well. He's won some championships, and he's doing some other stuff now we'll get into, and all that good stuff. He is an adventure and endurance athlete on top of the acquisition entrepreneur I mentioned earlier. He buys and sells businesses for a living and has used his acquisition skills to build a multi-million-dollar children's education group from the ground up in less than 3 years. I hope he teaches them not to cry on planes or something. I don't know. Adrian spent almost a decade traveling the world in an attempt to run away from his addictions and inner demons. That's what I do on Fridays. It was only when he started to be true to his authentic self and prioritized his personal development and well-being that his life started to turn around. In 2022, Adrian ran, cycled, kayaked across Scotland. Then in March 23, he participated in a multi-day endurance event in the Arctic Circle. Just thinking about that makes an endurance event for me. In June, and how cold it might be. In June 23, he ran across northern England. And in November 23, he's competing in the Spartan World Championships in Sparta, Greece. And in March 24, he's scheduled to be on a 14-day jungle expedition across Panama. This guy is on the run, but he stopped long enough to show up for the show. Welcome to the show, Adrian. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Chris. It's wonderful to be here.
We appreciate you taking time out of running from everybody. How many police officers are after you, sir? You're just on the run everywhere.
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully not that many anymore. Hopefully I'm outpacing them. So yeah.
There you go. Well, it sounds like you're definitely ahead of them and ahead of schedule. So, Adrian, welcome to the show. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs, please?
Yeah, so the best website, or the central hub for myself is adrianknight.co.uk. As I'm sure you can tell by my accent, I'm British. So
that's okay, we won't hold it against you.
Yeah, thanks.
We're an international show, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, so there you go. The British, we love it. How's that King thing working out?
Okay, I think. Okay,
yeah.
I haven't really stopped long enough to sort of observe too much, but I think it's going well. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, we used to joke on the show, God save the Queen, whenever our British guests would leave, and they would look at us askance like, what the hell? But why is a Yankee saying that? But you know, I don't know. You guys got that new king, and I don't know. As long as he stays awake, I think you guys can do some stuff with him there.
I hope so. Yeah, they've just changed the stamps, so we've now got the new stamps. So all of and I'm gutted because I had loads of, and still have loads of stamps behind me with the Queen's head on, but they don't. I can't use them anymore. So
they're probably collector's items, or will be collector's items maybe someday.
One day. Yeah.
There you go. When people be like, "Remember those good old days with that Queen lady? She was pretty nice." Yeah. But anyway, so I digress. Give us a 30,000 overview of what you do and how you do it there.
Yeah, so from a career perspective, a professional perspective, I buy, turn around and sell companies. I've used that skill set to build a small group of companies in the children's education space. Prior to becoming a dad myself, I had no knowledge of that sector, and it was purely becoming a dad that made me sort of realize I wanted to get involved in this whole new world that I was sort of encountering. On the other side of that, I'm very much into my sort of endurance events, and they've been getting a little bit more extreme. So I actually fly out to Athens tomorrow for the Spartan World Championships, and
wow.
I just it's given a whole new dimension to my life.
So what are you going to be doing in that event? Tell us how that event works. What are the activities in that event? Is it extreme eating? I don't know, buffet style stuff. What goes on there?
Oh, if it was extreme eating, I'd be world champion several times over. I can promise you that.
Sitting in a lazy boy watching TV for 12 hours at a time, something like that. Is that what goes on there?
Yeah, something like that. So there's 3 races. You have a 5K, a 10K, and a 21K run, and there's obstacles within each of those. So on the 21K, there's 30 obstacles. On the 10K, there's 25, and on the 5K, I think there's 15 obstacles. And
I'm having an obstacle just thinking about doing it right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's great fun, but when you're doing it, it's great fun in hindsight. When you're doing it, it's a little bit, why am I doing this? But they have some cool obstacles. So one of the obstacles is like throwing a spear like an old Spartan. And if I'm honest, that's probably the reason why I do it, because it's pretty cool to throw. You
really want to spear somebody. You got some enemies going on there.
That's why I'm running. Yeah.
So give him a spear.
Yeah.
It's always good to be good at that spear chucking, because you just never know when shit goes full medieval and the zombies come. You can spear chuck, and the zombies are, if it's just it's full medieval, we're gonna go back to what is it, crossbows and spears. So it's a good talent to have, especially if you play like World of Warfare, or one of those medieval video games. It's good to have spear chucking down.
That's it, and I've got my battle axe ready. So
got the battle axe. Is there an event for that too? Jesus,
if there was, I'd be signing up for it.
So, what motivates you to want to do these things? Like, what's wrong with you? No, I'm just kidding. What motivates you to want to do these things?
I've always, fundamentally, I've just got a thirst for life. But what's sort of driving a lot of this was something that is actually a therapist I was seeing a couple of years ago said to me, which didn't go into any confidential details, but he said that he had a patient who was sitting on the same chair that I was sitting on at the time. And that patient said that their biggest regret in life was that they didn't use their body in every which way they could. And I sort of thought about that. I was like, that's interesting, because you normally hear about people saying, I wish I hadn't worked as much, or I'd spent more time with my family, or I'd stayed in contact with like school friends, etc. But I'd never heard anyone say, I wish I'd used my health in every way I could.
That guy clearly didn't like his family then.
No.
He's like, I'd rather use my body. Screw that family bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm running away. But it really struck a chord with me. And I'd done some I've done like a marathon sort of quite a few years before, done a triathlon, and I just felt like, something could happen. I don't hope it doesn't. But I didn't want to look back with all of these regrets about what I could have done, essentially.
Yeah, you're only young once, and it's youth is wasted on the young, and it goes quick. You got to kind of have fun while you can, because you get to be my age, and people talk about doing these 21K things, and I'm just like, The only 21K I'm eating is calories. So there's about that. So speaking of your therapist, let's talk about your journey. Were you always this way? Were you always active and busy? Tell us about your life history, because I think you went through some stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, when I was 15, I was extremely overweight. You know, I was obese, and yeah, like I was yeah, but I was really overweight, and it impacted my life as certainly as like a 15-year-old in a very big way. And we was on holiday up in Scotland actually, and I walked past a mirror one day as we were just sort of going out, and I sort of caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I just saw this person staring back at me. I was like, that's not me. And it was a real, like, really stopped me in my tracks. I was like, this person staring back at me is like, that's not me. Like, there was a complete mismatch of identities there. And very, like, shortly after that, like literally within a couple of hours, I made a decision that I was going to do something about my weight. And that started a journey really where I lost quite a lot of weight over a period of a year. At that point, so I was 16. I was starting to get more attention from girls, which was the first time ever, and I was starting to find myself more socially, like with friends, and more socially out there. And that started a journey. But throughout my 20s, my weight oscillated a lot, so I never went back to certainly like the weight that I was, but it was constantly up and down. And I always used like some sort of physical event, like a half marathon or a marathon, to, like, when I could feel myself getting out of control, I'd use that to bring me back. I've shifted away from that sort of peak and trough cycle now to the point where I'm more interested in being in a state of like steadfast. So if someone said to me, right, why don't we go and, swim across that river or climb that, massive hill or mountain or whatever it is, or we run 10K, 20K, whatever it is, just being in a mental and physical state of mind, like where I could say, okay, like, let's go. And it's just, Now
you had a nervous breakdown at 19, right? And some other issues. Tell us about that and your journey through it.
Yeah, so I just come back from backpacking Europe. So I backpacked Europe when I was 18, done 12 countries. It's by far the best time of my life, and I came back on a real high. I started a apprenticeship working as a bricklayer. I just got into my first real relationship. So life, certainly on paper, should have been fantastic, but within 6 months, I'd had I was like really declining, like mentally, and in under the 12 months, I've sort of went to the doctor saying I don't know what's wrong, but I literally just don't know what's wrong. And they said, well, you're having a nervous breakdown, which was astonishing to me. It was the last thing I expected them to say. And they gave me a lot of different medications. So everything from sleeping tablets, because I wasn't sleeping, all the way across. And I remember going home, and again, I was still like 19. I hadn't quite turned 20. And I was sitting on my bed in my parents' house, looking at this medication, and again, just reaching a decision that I didn't want to go down that route. That wasn't for me. I wanted to figure out what was causing this. And even though that may have been a longer journey, and what I thought would be more painful, it was a journey I wanted to take. So it was a process of like rebuilding myself, like brick by brick. And my confidence had gone from a state of where I was confident enough to travel around Europe by myself at 18 to I literally couldn't look people in the eye. I was so bottomed out. And it was a very long and painful journey, but one that I'm so really grateful for having.
There you go. I mean, these are the great things about our stories and our journeys and our cathartic moments in life, is learning to not only get through them, but helping other people through them as well. So where in this journey do you start with your first business acquisition or start your first business?
So my first business, my first proper business, was when I was at university, and that was a student business. So I, after having this nervous breakdown, I knew I didn't want to be a bricklayer. But in hindsight,
of course,
Yeah, I've got no like nothing against it. I just knew that wasn't
just
for
tough
me.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and particularly in the British cold winters, it just
Jesus.
wasn't really for me.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to build. I didn't have that clarity back then, but in hindsight, I just wanted to build. So I went to university primarily because my girlfriend went to university, and I actually ended up dropping out after 3 weeks. But I stayed for 3 years, and the reason I stayed was because in that 3 week period, I'd started a very small business which was advertising local companies to who wanted to reach students.
Oh, wow.
And that evolved to the point where we were running multiple student event nights. We had the advertising, and we had a paid weekly column in a sort of the town newspaper. And that was great fun, and that was a real introduction to business. But at the same time, I was battling a lot of these sort of this nervous breakdown, and trying to sort of deal with the personal aspects as well as learn how to do business.
There you go. So one of the questions that we had here for you was, how do you buy a business with no money? Have you been doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I've acquired I think it's like 9-10 companies in the last few years, and every single one has been with none of my own money. There's reasons for doing that, primarily to manage risk. Buying a small business is very risky. And so the way you go about it is, it's not what people tend to think, which is, when people think of like buying businesses, they tend to think of like a big boardroom and you've got 20 lawyers each side, and it's all about the like hard financials. Like at bigger businesses, like larger businesses, I'm sure that's the way it goes. But at the small business level, it's actually about being human, and it's about having a conversation with the seller and understanding, why they're looking to sell, why they're looking to sell now, what's happened, what are they looking to achieve. And essentially it's about understanding the motivations of what's driving them and where they want to go, and looking for a way in which it can marry up with yourself. The key to it is being extremely authentic and being extremely moral. Like if there isn't an alignment there, then you don't want to move forward obviously for both the buyer and the seller. But essentially it's uncovering those motivations and seeing if you can sort of match them up.
So what got you interested in doing it this way, as opposed to, a way where, you just start a business and do a thing? What got you into it, and what kind of keeps you fixated on it, where, you've gotten really good at flipping? I imagine you're flipping these companies, aren't you? Or are you stacking them? Are you keeping them all?
Yeah, some of them. The children's education ones I'm sort of bringing together in a group. Some of the other companies I've bought have been more with the intention of going in. I can see where I can add value, adding that value, and then looking to exit that, whether that be to sell the business to a new owner or to the existing management team or something along those lines. Basically, to someone who will carry on that business, but much longer term than I'm prepared to do. What got me into it is essentially I'm a terrible startup entrepreneur. I had 12 failed startups throughout my 20s, and the reason that I sort of came to understand was because I'm probably more of an entrepreneur than, like, I'm not very good at the delivery aspect. So I was great at having the ideas, seeing the opportunities, getting everything moving. But then there comes a point quite quickly where the focus needs to be on delivery and systems and processes. And that just wasn't me. And it was when I discovered I was going to be a dad, I took quite a bit of time out and just reflected on who I wanted to be, what type of life I wanted to have, and most importantly, what type of father I wanted to be. And I just realized that I had to make some changes there. And acquisition just seemed to make a lot of sense to me.
There you go. So what sort of skills do you need to be successful at mergers and acquisitions and business turnarounds? And talk to us a little bit about, have you had to turn around some of these companies where they bottomed out and you were buying them on, discount because they were hitting the wall and you had to, make them run again?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, turning around a business is hard. It depends on the state of the business, because a business can range anywhere from stressed to highly distressed. And so you need to understand what you're going into. Quite often, a lot of the problems that you encounter when you go into a small business is like they can be quite easier to fix than may appear, because a lot of the problems tend to stem from the owners themselves. And to give an example of this, a lot of small businesses will employ like family members and close family friends and people where they're clearly not right for the role, or they're doing the wrong job, but the owner has just put themselves in a situation where, by doing what would be right by the business, makes it, that they start to jeopardize personal relationships. And so quite often they want someone like myself to go in to be able to make these changes that they just don't want to make themselves, because they still have to see their family at Christmas.
I am going to fire them. When we did mergers and acquisitions, we had the same problem. We would go in and we did a thing where we'd run an ad in the paper. This is a little bit older. And you probably run an ad somewhere now, but we'd run it in the business section for business sales. And it would be basically that we had money to loan struggling businesses. And what we would do is we get, this flood of P&Ls that would get sent to us, which is insane, because if you went into most businesses and go, hey, can I see your P&L? It'd be just, it's proprietary, off. But these people would mail us like whatever we asked for. And so you could sit and cherry pick what you wanted. I wrote about some of this in my book. And the interesting part, and actually this is in the book, the interesting part is sometimes we'd run in that family situation like you're talking about. And, you show up at the office to give do your due diligence, walk around, and, you're like, oh, your mom works here, and your brother and your son and all these people, and you're going to hit bankruptcy probably in 3 months. I wonder why. Families are really tough to have involved in your business, as are friends, personal friends. I don't bring my personal friends into business, because I got to be able to fire you. I got to be able to fire people, and I like to fire people that don't do their job right. I don't like to fire people that do good jobs, but I like to fire people that are just shitty. And they're just bad at everything, and they're just being lazy usually is the problem, or fucking around. And so I have no qualms about it whatsoever after thousands of employees. But yeah, I would sit and give them an offer, and I'd be like, but here's the deal. And they'd always be like, so what about my family? Can guarantee that you don't lay off my family and me? I want to stay on. And I'm like, no, number one, you have to go because you're part of the problem. So we're going to give you some money to hit the road. Your family's probably going to get laid off because they're part of the problem too. And I just be like, well, I don't want them. I don't want them to be laid off. And you're like, dude, we're just putting off the inevitable, dude, here at this point. You're 3 months away from bankruptcy. You're fucking around. You got to bite the bullet. And they're probably the ones taking you down, which they usually were. I come in, I'd be like, these people have no idea what they're doing other than they're related. But yeah, I've seen that a lot. It's freaking crazy. So, you have any stories about bringing any of the companies back from the dead and then flipping them or turning them into massive success?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of our the business I still own, I bought that 2 years ago. It's a national children's franchise network. So we have 70 franchisees across the UK, Ireland, Scotland, and a couple abroad in Australia and the Middle East as well. And that business was severely impacted by COVID because none of the children's classes could run. And the owner had been trying to sell this business for 5 years, and they had several failed attempts, and she was at her wit's end. She just had another grandchild come along, and she just wanted out. But like this is a 30-year-old company, like, and she had a large franchise network. She couldn't just walk away. She felt incredibly, sort of responsible for it, and rightly so. There's a lot of families being fed from this business.
Wow.
And so she had heard that I had acquired a smaller children's franchise, and they approached saying, would you be interested? And when we looked at the financials, I mean, they made a massive loss. They just posted their year end. It was significant, and like 6 figures.
Wow.
And that sort of meant we had to act really quickly, and we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. And when I say we, I mean sort of my team around me. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to go for it. And 12 months later, we posted our accounts, and we had actually made a 6-figure profit from that business. But the turnaround process was actually quite, in the grand scheme of things, compared to some of the other ones I'd done, it was actually a lot more lighter touch. Like, we had to make a few changes here and there. Mm-hmm. There was a very toxic person managing the business, extremely toxic, who was poisoning the network against the owners. And yeah, what we found out post sale, what the owner just happened to forget to tell us before going in, was that they had previously hired 12 people in that business, and every single one had left within 2 months because of this manager. And so it was like, right, okay, it would have been nice to know beforehand. So
thanks for telling us, buddy.
I know, right? They had, so as soon as we took that person out of the equation and made some really minor changes, it started to turn around quite quickly. And quite often when you go into these businesses, the very fact that you're going in and bringing in some energy can be enough to prop up the people, the employees, the partners, suppliers, etc., who want to do good and want to make the business work. So that was, in the grand scheme of things, quite a nice one, and still got that business today. And it's going from strength to strength.
There you go. That's quite the challenge to do. A lot of times there's those employees that are holding you back and being a dredge, and sometimes they're just being jerks to be jerks. So that's like an awesome journey to go on. I thought I had lined up to ask you about that organization, and I thought you'd start as a charity, but you actually picked it up in acquisition, the Children's Education Group. Then, it was So the Children's Education Group has been built entirely from acquisition, but that was a very nice one. I've had some, my last acquisition, I bought the business off a gentleman. He was one of 2 brothers. He had his wife employed in the business. He had his stepson. He had his best mate from school, and this guy was in his 50s, who was a sales manager. And he had a guy he used to coach on the football team when he was in his teenage years, and that guy was in his 40s. But that guy who he was coaching, he was stealing from the business. The sales manager was making sales, but they had no margin, so it was actually costing the business. The wife, bless her, she'd spent her 20-year career as a dinner lady and was now running the finances, so everything was paper-based. And the stepson was a lovely guy, but didn't have a clue what he was doing. And they were all being paid very, very well. And this was a 10-person business, which is quite large for a small business, to have 10 people in, and you're looking at 4 or 5 of the staff. So it's 50% of them. So that was very challenging. That's crazy, man. So on your Instagram, you're doing a lot of things over there. What's going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very blessed to, because of the role I play in the acquisitions, I intentionally keep myself out of the day-to-day aspects of business. So I'm far more involved in the strategic side, and essentially employ people much better than me to go in and deliver. So I have quite a lot of bandwidth. I've quite a lot of bandwidth, and I've been using that bandwidth to participate a lot more in endurance events, and just try all these different parts of life that I wanted to try, but also to help people who may be in a situation like I was previously in, if they're struggling with alcohol or addictions or various sort of vices or things that are holding them back, and just to help them just get on the right path, really. And that's been incredibly fulfilling, like really, really fulfilling.
There you go. So I know your website is coming up soon. You're making some changes to it. What are going to be the offerings on your website? What are people going to be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, so there's going to be two core offerings. The first one that's already live on my Instagram, which is essentially mindset and like life coaching, and that's very much focused around like habits, fitness, and nutrition, and using the three combined to put you into a far more like higher version of yourself. I've got a small group of clients who I work with, and it's like been very transformational for them, and it's something I live by day, very transformational for me as well. And that's more like the personal development side. And on the business side, I am currently working with a small group of people who want to learn how to buy businesses, but I'm particularly interested in working with sellers, people who might be looking to sell their business at some point down the line, helping them to position their company and to get as much value as they can out of it. And that's purely stemmed from the fact that I've looked at so many, like hundreds and hundreds of small businesses, and it's really heartbreaking to see or to speak to an owner who spent 20 years building their business. They have their whole retirement, tied up in this, and they're just completely not ready, and they won't get a tenth of what they think they're going to get. And I just want to help some people there.
Definitely. It's you can run a great business for a long time, and it can seem like everything's going really well. And, you can go 10 years down the road, and suddenly the market changes and the world changes, and everything kind of gets turned upside down. And then you're like, hey, what's going on with this? And, it's sometimes sad because, I ran, our longest running company was like 20 years, and then came the 2008 mortgage crisis, and it was a mortgage company. I built companies I thought I would have for a lifetime. And there's some times where, especially with great recessions, that it just all gets taken away from you. And sometimes you can save companies, you can bring them back. Sometimes you can put the work in and change them. You just never know. But being able to save them, definitely, and being able to have that skill set. How do you, with what you do in your life in the athletics that you use and the development of yourself, your core strengths and improvement? I noticed there's a picture of you on Instagram here with David Goggins. I read his books, and he's an extraordinary man, not only from his masochistic abusive exercise, but also his discipline and determination. Sometimes I read his book and I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, what happened to you? But God bless him. He can kick ass and take names, and he can run around the block by the time I get up out of my lazy boy recliner. So he's got something on me. I think he's my age too, which is really shameful. When I see his videos, I'm like, geez, that guy's my age, and I'm getting tired just watching him. But how do you transform some of these sort of things that you use to be disciplined in your exercise and your these achievement things that you're on, and how does that play in your personal life and your executive life?
Yeah, in a very big way. So the big changing point in my life, and I always say this is like the secret sauce, like to anyone listening, like this is really it, was when I started to create some time and space in my life to focus on me. So the way I done that was by getting up earlier, and I started by getting up 15 minutes earlier and simply just having a cup of tea, because I'm British and I like my tea, and just having, like, before any emails, any social media, family still asleep, just that time for me. And in a very short period, I started to notice that I was feeling better, and it was having an impact as I sort of went into my day. Then I thought, well, this is cool. Why don't I make it half an hour earlier? But I use that sort of extra time to read 10 pages of a book. And again, it started to have more and more impact. And I just kept going from there. So I started off by getting up about 5:45. I now get up at 4 a.m. every morning, and the first 3 hours of the day is purely for me. I read, I journal, I visualize, I meditate, and I work out. And what has happened is, whereas before I was getting up as a level 2 version of myself, a level 3 version, I still get up as a level 2 or level 3 version, but I spend the first part of the day like priming myself. So then when I come back from the gym and I walk through the door and I see my 4-year-old daughter and I see my wife and I'm starting to think about my day, I'm more like a level 7, level 8 version of myself. And that has had a very profound impact, because what it's done is meant that I'm going into like my working life, my personal life, and I can see things clearer, and I've got more confidence to be able to like follow through on any decisions I make. And that really, in a very short period of time, just turned my life around in so many ways. And I've helped to sort of guide people on applying a very similar philosophy in their lives, like doing this with some of the people that I work with and seeing some of the changes they've had in such a short period. It's been really eye-opening. Like, this stuff is powerful, and it's so accessible to anyone, and it costs nothing. Like, it's just the willingness to get up sort of 15-30 minutes earlier. And so anyone who might be struggling, I always suggest, like, that's the place you have to start. You have to create a bit of time for yourself.
There you go. I like this morning thing. I didn't used to do a morning thing, and I started doing one this year, going out and sitting in the vitamin D sun, spending time with my dogs, starting my circadian rhythms, and having just more time in the morning instead of just waking up, hit the bell, and you're like, rush, open the emails, instead of pacing myself and taking myself down the road and going, hey, I'm going to get to everything else when I get to it. We're going to have this peaceful sort of thing. I remember watching Jeff Bezos. To meet the demands of the day. You feel less you feel less being you're not being pushed or browbeaten all day long. Like, you're just being attacked by everything sometimes, and you're just trying to sometimes react to stuff. Where if you lay that foundation in the morning of taking your time and peace, and I love like going to the gym at 4 a.m. because no one's there. Like, it's just me and maybe like a couple other people. And then it's a giant gym, and I have the whole place to myself. And so I can wander around. I can just kind of be peaceful. I don't have to wait for stuff to get on or off it. I have to put up with stupid people running around me. I can just kind of enjoy the gym. I can go in the jacuzzi or the sauna, and, I've got some peace. If I go there when it's busy, there's always some idiot in the sauna wanting to talk. And you're like, do you understand this is kind of a meditative area? Like, I don't want to hear your life story. Like, God, especially your life, buddy. Like, I'm not even sure why you're telling anybody about it, because it's awful. But, and so I like going in those quiet moments. But yeah, I've kind of learned that laying that foundation, having that quiet time, and building on that just makes a whole difference in your whole day.
It's huge, and I never fully appreciated how big an impact this was having until I stopped doing it. And so it was last October, we went on a week-long family vacation, and it was really nice a vacation. And the whole trip I felt terrible, and I couldn't understand why. We're in these lovely surroundings. We've got my 3-year-old daughter at the time, my wife, like life couldn't be better. I just made an acquisition. So I really felt everything across the board was fantastic. And yet I felt awful, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. And it was the day before we came home when I woke up, and I was like, I get it. I understand why I'm feeling like this. It's because I haven't done me. I haven't taken the time, because I was waking straight up and going straight into dad mode, even though he was in his lovely surroundings, straight into dad mode. And I hadn't done me. And that's what I had struggled with, particularly after like months and months of always having this this time sort of set aside every single day, 7 days a week. And that just cemented it for me. And that, if anything, sort of evolved to, I think at the time I was getting up about 5 a.m., maybe 5:30. And I was like, I want more time for me. What impact would that have? And yeah, it's just been sort of evolving ever since.
There you go. So give us your final thoughts as we go out and pitch the audience to reach out to you, work with you, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. So I love working with people who are looking to improve their lives, people who may have a sense that they've got a lot more in them, but don't quite know how to access that. I've already worked with people in sort of various situations, whether they're actually like combating addictions or whatever, all the way through to life's pretty good, but I want it to be great. The best place to get me is my website, which is adrianknight.co.uk. And I'm also very active on social media, especially Instagram. I normally post on there several times a day, and I try to like give people an actual glimpse of what's going on beneath the surface. So some of the struggles I still, face day to day and sort of work through. So yeah, even my website or social media. And the best the handle for my social media is Adrian J Knight, and that's for all of the channels.
Glad to have you on the show, man. People need your motivation and need to do more. And people always, I don't want to start a company until I get some money, or I put this together. And people need to realize that they can go do it. It's not that hard. It's sometimes hard to dig companies out of thing, but you can cherry pick because when you look at acquisitions, it's what was Ted Turner's famously said: you never lose anything saying no to a deal and walking away. So if you see something you don't like, you can always come back, but you can say no to it, turn it away. It gives you a whole lot better opportunity. And it's interesting, Matt, how many businesses will when they're in trouble will share just like all the data with you, and sometimes you can learn more from that than you can from buying them out or getting involved in their business. You're just like, wow, I won't do things that way. Kind of like the family situation. So Adrian, thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Give us your .com once more as we go out. Yep.
It's adrianknight.co.uk.
There you go. Thank you very much for coming on. Thanks, Monis, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and all those great places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time. And that should have